believe we are live. Hey, how are ya? Welcome to YouTube. So, yeah, guys, we are now officially live on the YouTubes, and let's make sure this is going to work. This is always fun when we're trying to... Yeah, here we go. All right, yeah. This is all fun working. Okay, so let's make sure that link works, and this is all perfect. So in theory, guys, let's make sure latency here is much shorter, so I'll actually be able to see. This is all perfect. So in theory, guys, in more real time, Lee is here. Latency here is much shorter, so I'll actually be able to see. So yeah, let's get started. In theory, guys, in more real time, as folks are popping in, latency here is much shorter. As always, let us begin the show with what has been happening in and around the podcast network since last year spoke loads. As always, let us begin the show and we have what has been happening in and around as per usual, just dropping bangers left and right. As always, we have what has been happening in and around as per usual, just dropping bangers left and right. Under My Wheels, Ricky Morgan, dropping more under my wheels. The podcast in which Under My Wheels, Ricky Morgan, driving around, dropping taggers under my wheels. The podcast, we've got the podcast on Haunted Hill, Under My Wheels, Ricky Morgan, driving around, dropping both taggers under my wheels. Fantastic movie. The podcast, we've got the podcast on Haunted Hill. In fact, speaking of podcast, on driving around, dropping both taggers under my wheels. Just the podcast, we've got the podcast on Haunted Hill. In fact, speaking of podcast, on driving around. All right, sorry about the echo there. I do apologize. Okay, so where was I? Yeah, podcast on Haunted Hill, a host and Train to Busan, both fantastic movies. By all means, you should check both the episode and those movies out. Kill the Cast. Presenting Underwater Kaiju from Outer Space number 5 on Yog, the monster from outer space, which, by the way, Yog is among my favorite titles for anything. Yog is pretty great. Yeah, sorry again about the echo. Hey, first time for everything. But now that I do think this is a lot smoother, and I can actually see the questions that you guys have in much realer time, which is pretty great. So, what else? Who Will Survive, episode 14. Talking about Veronica and the movie Splinter, which, by the way, we covered Veronica on the last episode of Devour the Podcast in a show that I thought turned out pretty good. And also... Splinter is a great movie. If you have never seen Splinter, you should watch that movie. It is a great monster film. I like that quite a bit. Makes me happy. And so very few things in this life do, but Splinter is one of those. Some really creepy, like, monster motions, like the real twitchy kind of stuff. It's real cool. I like that a lot. So, Pick 6 Movies, episode 4 of season 2 dropped. We are closing in on the finale for Pick 6 Movies this season. Episode 4 was on Stuart Saves His Family, and slight spoilers, I ended up being way more confessional on that episode than perhaps I have been on other shows. Just because of the subject matter that it was dealing with, and it was subject matter that strangely I related to, and sometimes you start talking about stuff from family life, and this is all years and years ago. But if you want a peek inside the twisted psyche going on in here, that episode will tell you a few things about me. Um, pardon me. So, what else we got going on? Cinema Psyops has they're wrapping up their franchise fest on the Death Wish franchise with Death Wish 2018, which we discussed right here on Morbid Mondays not so long ago. And I feel I'm still of two minds about that movie. I don't think it's terrible. It's certainly not the worst Eli Roth movie. It's just not great, you know? It just ain't great is my problem with it. I want it to be better than it is. You know, it feels like it should be an honest to goodness, you know, kind of real movie, and it's kind of not. It wants it a little bit of both ways. It wants to be a bit of a, I don't know, kind of an exploitation movie, which is, you know, what those Death Wish movies were, but also it doesn't quite work that way. I don't know. It's a really strange kind of film, I find. At any rate, also, hey, speaking of the YouTube, which we're on right now, if you're interested in seeing some more stuff, you could check out the game night that Misty and I did where we played Alan Wake, and that that game was surprisingly cool. And I think we're gonna play a little bit more of that. I thought that was pretty good stuff. Let's see what else we got going on. Roth is better at cutting exploitation trailers than his movie, says Lee. You are 100% correct about that, I believe. Let's see what else we got. The VD Clinic, episode number 15. That episode entitled Duncan and Bo Get VD, aka Night Seed. That is a filthy episode in which Duncan and I join Darren and Vanessa to talk about the naughty little movie Nightbreed, as well as the book. And things get raunchy pretty fast, and it comes fast and furious, and also all over the face and neck and chest. Rabbit in Red Radio had Slasher Summer going on with the Slaughterhouse. That series continues. Cinema Psyops. Oh, I did Cinema Psyops already. Kill the Cast also dropped just yesterday the review of The Puppet Master, The Littlest Reich, which is a movie I have yet to see, but I will very, very soon. And speaking of Kill the Cast, they're doing their Horror Coliseum episode, which dropped today, on Friday the 13th, 1980, versus A Nightmare on Elm Street, the OG, you know, Friday the 13th versus Nightmare on Elm Street, where they put those two films in a battle royale scenario, and then try to pick a winner. And if I had to go, you know, Elm Street over Friday the 13th, sure. I believe I'm in that camp. That would be my call for sure. So yeah, so that's what's been going on around the network, and thank you, Michelle. And let's see. So let's talk about something we haven't talked about in a while here on Morbid Mondays, and that is, of course, the bad movie of the week. So actually, most of the movies I've been watching recently are either movies that were pretty good or movies that I'm talking about on other shows, and I don't want to get too deep into it. Like I saw Unfriended Dark Web, but we're going to do a whole review of that on Devour the Podcast this month. And I didn't want to, you know, I don't want to spoil it, right? You know, I want you to listen to that episode. I think it'll be good. So, but that doesn't mean that I haven't been watching bad movies, because, you know, sometimes that's what I do. And in this case, I watched a movie entitled Dawning of the Dead. And it's... So here's the thing that bothers me about the Dawning of the Dead, is that it is first of all, it is invoking the name of, Dawn of the Dead. It calls to mind a little George Romero for sure. More than that, it is just kind of a boring movie. I don't think it's 2 hours long, but it sure feels that way. And it's, it is the origin of a zombie virus. It doesn't do anything interesting with it. There's like a terrorism subplot, and it's kind of one of those things where it's like, hey, a crazy person believes that we need to kind of purge the world a little bit. And as such, we're going to release a zombie virus and let everybody turn into zombies, and that's going to make the world a better place or something. Anyway, it's real dopey. And there's a little bit of, Dead Air. Is that right? Dead Set, the British miniseries, the zombie miniseries that is actually really, really good. And I would highly recommend that if you've never seen that one. But at the end of the day, it was a real bummer. It's real dull. It doesn't go anywhere, and it takes forever to get nowhere. And it doesn't have a real ending either. It's a really, really bad movie. And normally, this would be the point where, like, Jason Gray would say, hey, that sounds great. But even for somebody like Jason, I wouldn't recommend this because it is just, it is just rotten cover to cover. It's really dull. I find it to be intensely frustrating to watch. And yeah. Anyway, so that is Dawning of the Dead. I do not recommend it, even as a bad movie. Likewise, we're gonna double up on bad movies here. Likewise, I would not recommend a movie called The Telling. Yeah, absolutely, Lee. You're 100% right, saying boring movies, exercises, and nothing are the worst. They are the absolute worst. So yeah, so let's get on to The Telling. The Telling is came out a few years ago. It's an anthology film. The claim to fame is that a couple of the girls next door are in it. What up, Gary? Gary had to cancel a pretty sweet guest spot. Uh-oh. Well, welcome anyway, Gary. We'll work all this out together. But hey, thanks for dropping in. So yeah, so The Telling was this anthology show or movie, and none of the stories are particularly good. Like, there's a killer doll one. There's a like haunted Hollywood sort of story. I don't even remember what the last one was now. I'm trying to think. But anyway, there's a wraparound story. Like, it has all the trappings of a real anthology, but none of them are very entertaining. And more so, here's my real problem with this movie, is that I don't have a problem with horror films that go for a little bit of titillation, right? Movies that want to marry the ideas of sex and horror, like listen to that Nightbreed episode. That is nothing but talking about, hey, sometimes doing it and dying are inexorably tied together, right? So, but The Telling falls more in the line of something like those witchcraft movies, which I think there are about 20 of those, somewhere in the neighborhood of, where it's just like, hey, at a certain point, here's a real shitty plot and cheap production value, and at some point, we're gonna get it on. And that's kind of it. That's all there is to those movies, and it's really frustrating because there is something to be said for, horror being kind of sexy. That the idea of the French call it le petit mort, the little death, and there's a reason for that. That there is something kind of life affirming about sex, whereas horror is all about the threat of death. And yeah, Lee, you're right. They're just kind of No, Gary, I'm not telling you there's no boobs in the movie. There are boobs in the movie, but to me, that's not titillating. Just somebody flashing their tits is not interesting. It's, you can pause and be like, well, those are nice breasts, I suppose. But at the end of the day, it's like, what are you doing with the idea of sexuality? And that's why Clive Barker tends to be so interesting, is that Clive Barker is all about the idea of, what makes the allure of sexuality and the allure of pleasure potentially deadly. That's what those Hellraiser movies are about. And the telling is, I had seen it once long ago and I didn't remember it very well. And it was kind of in the collection. I was like, I'm going to watch this again because I don't remember if this was really bad or not. And it turns out it is. But it also gave me a launching pad to talk about something that kind of ticks me off, which is I'm not crazy about movies that just give you a flash of the tits and expect that that's reason to come to the movie. And when nothing else about the movie is very interesting or scary or mysterious or atmospheric or any of those things. It just comes across as being really cheap. Gary asks, what if the boobs have some kind of fascinating feature, like an extra nipple or possibly a Quado monster? Well, yeah, but then you're doing something interesting with it, right? Like, Night of the Demons is kind of interesting because, yeah, there's a Linnea Quigley breast shot, but then she pushes a tube of lipstick into her breast, and it's like, well, this went from sexy to kind of weird all at once, and yet I'm still aroused. So yeah, there is room for that for sure, but not just like, hey, the girl steps out of the shower and we get a look at the goods, and that's kind of it. I just want more, by God. I've seen, I was going to say I've seen enough breasts. Is that really true? I've seen enough movies that flash breasts at you in my lifetime to serve me well from here on out. I want a movie that's going to, do something interesting with the concept of sexuality and horror. Give me a Videodrome or something. That's what I'm talking about. Let's see. Night of the Knobs. Night of the Demons 2 has boobs that turn into hands and kill someone. Yes. See, that's all I need. That's all I want. So, enough. And I don't know that there's a great example other than something like, Hellraiser is, of course, a great example of a movie that deals with sexuality and horror. The Hunger, I suppose, is pretty good about that. But these days, it seems like it's tough to find, which is really disappointing. So, anyway, enough about Dawning of the Dead and The Telling, which are both bad movies that you shouldn't watch. Let's get back to other stuff. So, obviously, if you're watching this, which thank you, by the way, we'll be doing pretty much everything on the YouTube channel. I think this feels to me like we are getting a good picture, and it doesn't seem to be as stuttery and janky. So we'll continue to do stuff here. Like I said, we did the game night on Saturday, which I thought was real fun. It was an interesting discussion, and so I think moving forward, YouTube is going to be where we do the video stuff. The Facebook video, I think, is not great. So speaking of the video stuff, we've got more coming. Speaking of sexy, but we've got, we've got some more stuff. We're going to do another episode of Underground that should be done this week. I just need to sit down and put it together. We've got the Legion Podcast 100 horror moments, which we are going to start weeding our way through. And Gary says he finally saw a Hellraiser Judgment. really like the direction they're going. It's fine. It's certainly better than most of the sequels have been. I think it's a little cheap looking. I don't know that it goes anywhere really. Yes, you're right. It is better than what they've been doing. I wish someone would pick up that baton and make it up the production value a little bit, make it a more coherent story, make it a little bit more interesting, and then you really got something. Michelle says it's easier to stalk me here. I don't think it's that hard. I'm very convenient to Michelle. Lee says, are they really going in a direction, or did they just get lucky with their latest placeholder film to keep the rights? It's a fine question. I don't know. It feels like they set out to make a better movie instead of just slapping the Hellraiser name on it. Excuse me. And but I do agree. I think it's better than most of the sequels have been in some time. Certainly better than, what was the... Oh, geez. Somebody give me the name of the last one. The one that was Hellraiser. The one that was all set in the house and had the chubby pinhead. Anyway, one of you guys will tell me. And Revelations. That's right. Thanks, Lee. Gary says, I like the minimal pinhead action without cheapening it. Yeah, I agree. Although there are some really good visuals in it. I'm very curious to see what they do with that franchise. I like to think that even though it's straight to video, I would imagine that Judgment did probably as, better than most of those sequels, just because there was enough word of mouth and enough people saying, no, really, this time it's not terrible. So maybe. I hope so. I would like to see them continue with the franchise and maybe do something interesting with it. So, hey, over on the Facebook page for Devour the Podcast, facebook.com/groups/Devour the Podcast. I've got a post up there. So here's a really dumb idea I had, and I'm committed to it, which is for the month of September. We've got some other stuff planned for October that's going to be really cool. In fact, I think October is going to be, like, the episode that we've got coming in October is going to be really, really good. And I've already started working on it. It's going to take some heavy lifting to get it out there and happening, but it's going to be cool. But in the meantime, in September, I have kind of committed myself to watching a movie a day or thereabouts. On average, a movie a day. I may double up on a couple of days or something like that. But if you go over to the Legion Podcast, not Legion Podcast, but the Devour the Podcast group over on Facebook, there's a post there. I'm kind of interested in getting suggestions for movies. So if you want to drop a movie there, it doesn't matter if I've seen it or not, if you just want to hear me chat about it. So what I'm going to do is collect 30 movies. If I got to come up with them all myself, that's fine. If you want to give me a movie to watch, that's fine too. And at the end of every week, I'm going to do a quick episode, a little bonus episode of Devour that is just me talking about the movies I've watched in that week, kind of good and bad, and we'll see, how all that goes. So that is over there right now, and you can check that out. And please do give me some suggestions. I will take all comers unless the movie is just impossible to find. House of Wax. I assume that is Ricky. What is up, man? Yeah. So I wanted to do something real stupid for September in the lead up to October, because that's where shit gets real. So yeah. That's happening. Let me pull up my other notes. So, look, we're probably not going to run super long this evening, just because, hey, we're making the transition. Not as many people came over this time, and I only have so much on my list of things to talk about. So, pardon me. But I do want to mention what is coming to the streaming services between now and when next we speak. And got a handful of movies for you to check out. Over on Netflix, the really, really cool found footage vampire film Afflicted is dropping. I don't remember if that's today or in a couple of days, but keep an eye out for Afflicted. That's a great movie. No Country for Old Men, which is not technically horror, but it also has one of the best villains in recent cinema history, I feel, with Anton Chigurh. So if you've never seen No Country for Old Men and you have Netflix, you take some time out of your day and watch that movie. Then over on Hulu, we've got a movie called Wraith, which is not The Wraith with Charlie Sheen and the haunted race car. It is instead a movie called Wraith, which is about a ghost that what is creeping some people out in a house. Haven't seen that one yet, but as with everything, I'm sure I'll get around to it because I don't discriminate. I watch every horror movie in the world and that I can get my hands on, good, bad, or indifferent. Which is why I see things like Dawning of the Dead and The Telling, quite frankly. Also on Hulu, you've got Baskin, which is a foreign film that is kind of the better version of The Void in some ways. It's really bizarre and culty, and it's not... I don't know that I would call it a great movie, although a lot of people really liked it, but I would recommend it. If you've never seen Baskin, give it a shot. It wasn't necessarily my cup of tea, but there were enough people that I respect who really dug it that I'm kind of okay with it. You should check out Baskin if you haven't seen it, is the point. And then a movie called Desolation, which is about a couple of ladies and their kids getting stalked in the woods on a camping trip. Again, a movie I haven't seen, but I've heard pretty good things about it. So one of those things I'm sure I will watch. Excuse me. And I bit my tongue when I did that. That's gonna hurt. So Amazon ain't got nothing for you this week. They had their beginning of the month dump, and Lisa's Desolation was pretty good. Okay, I will give Desolation a look. Amazon got nothing for you. Over on the Shudder, they're dropping, I think as of today, the Blair Witch Project and Blair Witch 2 Book of Shadows. And in a couple of days, I want to say Wednesday, the first season of Channel Zero, the creepypasta inspired sci-fi channel show, this one, the Candle Cove season, dropped. And I watched the first couple of episodes, which I thought were really good, and I just kind of lost track of it. You know how it goes. Sometimes you start watching a show and then things happen, life gets in the way. But I now that it's on Shudder, I'll definitely check back in on that. And so that's kind of it until next week. And so let's start wrapping up. If there's anything else you want to chat about, let me know. I will also mention to you that we have kind of confirmed, I think, what the Patreon stuff is going to be. That is also going to be launching in September. And we're going to have two tiers. It's going to be one for $2 a month. And the other one's going to be $5 a month. And at the $2 tier level, you are going to get 2 audio commentaries for movies. And if you're part of the Patreon sign up, which we will launch that on the 1st. We are not going to launch the Patreon stuff until we have the goods, so that as soon as you sign up, there is stuff waiting there for you to explore and experience and all that. So, but yeah, at the $2 level, you're going to get 2 audio commentaries every month. Not just me, but other hosts. And we've already got, some people lining up in terms of what commentaries they want to do. Then at the $5 level, first of all, you get, our appreciation, but you also, are going to get an invite. We're going to do once a month. We're just going to do a movie watching party. Probably on, I don't know, maybe a Wednesday night, something like that. I don't know. We'll figure out the details on that. But, at any rate, like, everybody who's paying $5 a month to help support the network gets to hang out with some of the hosts and, just kind of chit chat and watch a movie of your choosing. So, that is going to be the $5 level. Like I said, that'll launch in September once we have the stuff to give you. Like, we're working on getting the audio commentaries ready for that. And so please keep an eye out for that. It'll be patreon.com/Legion Podcast when it's done. And I'm putting the page together right now and all that fun stuff. So that'll be coming soon. If you can throw us a couple of bucks a month, we certainly appreciate it. If you want to do it for 1 month, see how it is, then you bounce out, that's fine too. We just want to make sure that it seems like it is actually a value of some kind. Lee says, a restored version of The Changeling is coming out from Severin Films tomorrow on DVD and Blu-ray. I'm really excited to see a Blu-ray of The Changeling. We talked about it on Podcast Under the Stairs when we were doing the best of the 80s and for 1980, and we talked about The Changeling there, and is undeniably a great film. One of the great, as Doug Tilley is quick to point out, one of the great Canadian horror films. Okay, so that's all I got for tonight. That Changeling. So here, before we go, I have been on a kick recently as I'm putting together some research material for the October Devour episode. So I spent about half an hour this afternoon just going through eBay and Amazon, buying obscure paperbacks. This will give you no clues as to what it is we're talking about, probably. But so there's in one case there's a series of books based around the subject we're going to be talking about. There's a collection of 8 books, and like 6 of them are all $5, and then there's one of them that is inexplicably like $30, and I guess it's out of print or something. But who on earth? I can't imagine right now who would want it, except for me, because I'm doing this show. But it really blew my mind. I was like, are you kidding me? I got to spend as much on one of these as I do on the other 5. So anyway, the life of a collector. But what reminded me of that is the Severin Films bit that Lee mentioned, just because I find that I don't really collect steelbooks and that kind of thing these days. I noticed that a bunch of steelbooks were dropping for, like Predator and Evil Dead and all these movies. And I'm like, you know what? I got the movies. I got them in a great format. Like the Blu-rays I've got all hold up really well, and they all look great. So I don't know. I'm not sure that I am a collector in that sense, and it needs to be kind of a special edition, or like, hey, this is the first time, like when Kingdom of the Spiders came out on Blu-ray, I was like, I gotta buy that because I need Kingdom of the Spiders in my life on Blu-ray. And Lee's saying some of them in the hundreds of dollars. Yeah, I mean, they're just, there's a certain point where there are collectibles and that mean something to you, but I'm also not one of those people that buys every Scream Factory release just because they're releasing a film. A lot of times they do a great job with the transfers and all that, but you know, you gotta you've got to be careful, I think, with what you're spending your money on, not just for financial reasons, but also just like, do you need it all? Where are you going to put it all? You know, physical media is slowly going away, sad to say, but you know, I've got a whole cabinet full of movies and games and stuff like that. And if I could have all the special features and the video quality all in digital or on a streaming platform, I would do it in a heartbeat just to make some room, you know? Lisa and I always have to save to track down old short story anthologies. Yeah, that's one thing I've been pretty good about. I generally don't throw out any books. But I went through a period where I was collecting all the John Skip and Craig Spector books, and that took some doing to track all that down and a little bit of coin. So, yeah, the life of a collector. Sometimes you just got to pick your battles, I guess, is the point to all that. So, anyway, hey, thanks guys for hanging out for the inaugural YouTube Morbid Mondays. We'll do it again here next week. And we'll try to drag some more people over so we get some more questions, and now that it's more real time, I can actually see what you're asking in relatively short order. Then yeah, we'll continue to have a good time. But thank you again for hanging out. I appreciate it very much. Thanks for checking out legionpodcasts.com and the shows there. As always, if you can, if somebody's looking for a podcast, give them a little word of mouth. Say, hey, I know a bunch of podcasts that you might like. We definitely appreciate that. And lastly, if you would do me a big favor, between now and when next we speak, have a great rest of the week. Have a fantastic weekend. And I'll see you right back here next Monday for the next Morbid Monday. So, bye, everybody.